I'm Ethan Harper. Now, I've never been one to get too emotional or overly dramatic, but if there's one thing I've always taken seriously, it's stability, my home, my work, and my family. I was running the business my father started from scratch. His name was Victor Harper, a tough, no-nonsense kind of guy who never let emotions cloud his judgment. To him, feelings were just another weakness. That's why he locked down everything with contracts, conditions, and airtight signatures. So when I told him I was going to marry Lila, he gave me a handshake, no smile, and slid a prenuptial agreement across the table. If she walks, he said, plain as day, you stay. The company stays. The house stays. That's how it was. I signed it. Lila did, too. We were young and head over heels. At the time, I couldn't imagine we'd ever need that paper. I thought it was just something to appease him. But looking back now, I see it for what it really was, a warning. My father could sense storms long before I even saw a cloud. Lila and I were together for over 25 years. We raised a daughter, Ivy. She was 22 when all this happened, sharp as a tack, beautiful like her mom, and just as stubborn as me. I always figured we were tied as a family. Not perfect, but strong, solid. I remember the date like it's carved into my brain, June 13th, just 5 days before our silver anniversary. I got home from work a little early that day. Things had gone well, meetings ended ahead of schedule, the market was looking up, and I thought, why not surprise Lila? Maybe start planning something for the big weekend. I stepped into the kitchen and saw them both, Lila by the counter, arms folded like she'd practiced a speech all afternoon. Ivy was at the table, watching the space between her mom and me like she was bracing for something. The air was charged, quiet but tense, like the moment before lightning cracks. Hey, I said, setting my briefcase by the door. What's going on? Lila gave me a tight-lipped smile. Ivy stood slowly, like she was easing into a hit. Ethan, Lila began, calm but serious, we need to talk. I blinked. About what? Ivy gestured to the table and said, can you sit, Dad? Please? This is important. Then Lila took the lead. Ethan, she said, her tone soft but kind of formal, it'll be 25 years and 5 days. And through it all, I've been loyal. Always. I smiled. Wouldn't have wanted it any other way. She smiled back for a second, but it didn't reach her eyes. I've given you the best 25 years of my life, she said. Now, I'd like to enjoy them a little. I raised an eyebrow, half confused, half amused. Are you saying you haven't enjoyed our life together? No, she said quickly. That's not what I mean. Her hands were clutched tight in her lap. She looked like she was holding something in. Ivy spoke up next. Dad, she said gently, what she's trying to say is she wants to live a little. She wants an open marriage. I turned to Ivy, trying to process that. So your mother wants to open up the marriage. And judging by this little presentation, I'm guessing this isn't the first time you've talked about it. And you're fully behind her on this? I asked. Ivy grinned, like she'd just passed some kind of exam. Absolutely. I support her completely. Not just as her daughter, but as a woman. I looked her dead in the eyes. How about you start supporting yourself first? You're 22, no job, no drive, still living off us. Maybe work on standing on your own feet before cheering anyone else on. She had nothing to say to that. I followed up with something else. I get it. You back your mother's decision. But you realize this request could end her marriage, right? She gave a little shrug, full of that invincible energy only the young have. Come on, Dad. Times have changed. Women are free to make their own choices now, especially when it comes to love. You can't keep her trapped in a marriage. I turned to Lila, quieter now. Are you trapped? She didn't answer. Not a single word. Just stared at her hands like they might spell out the truth for her. I leaned back, my thoughts drifting past the kitchen, past the sound of their voices, past the years we built together, family vacations, quiet evenings, her humming in the next room. And then I leaned forward again, locked eyes with her. If you've decided to open this marriage, I said calmly, I really hope you've thought it through. She stayed quiet. Because from where I'm sitting, I continued, this decision, the one about our marriage, was made without me. No discussion, no warning. I glanced between them. And judging by how you and Ivy are handling it, I'm guessing you've already got someone in the wings. Ivy chuckled. She's got a date next week. Mr. Thomas. You know, the guy who owns that restaurant on Cedar Boulevard. I turned toward her slowly. You keep a pretty close eye on your mother, huh? She smirked. So tell me something, I asked, my voice colder now. How's this supposed to work? Your mom goes out with other men while I sit at home like some fool, waiting for her to come back after getting nailed in a hotel room? Or what, some seedy motel? Or maybe a back alley? Ivy rolled her eyes. Ugh, Dad, seriously. That's not how it goes. She leaned back, relaxed. It's a date. If things go well, maybe they end up at a nice hotel. She's got standards. I let out a low, bitter laugh. Right. Standards, I muttered. The same ones I fund. Ivy shrugged like that was just how things were. Well, yeah. You're her husband. It's kind of your job. I sat there, quiet for a beat. Then I asked, and what exactly am I supposed to do while she's off exploring her options? Lila finally spoke again. Ethan, she said softly, you're free to date too. I wouldn't stop you. Before I could say anything back, Ivy snorted and grinned. Yeah, like there's a line of women waiting for you. They both laughed. I smiled too, just not in the way they were expecting. Well, I said, looking at both of them, I'm in. The laughter stopped on a dime. Lila blinked like she didn't hear me right. Ivy leaned forward, eyebrows raised. But, I added, there are some terms. Their faces dropped. Hard. There can't be conditions, Ivy snapped, her voice sharp. Mom's free to do what she wants. I smiled, calm as ever. Sure, but not in my house. Ivy scoffed. It's her house too. No, I said firmly. It isn't. I could have her out of here in 5 minutes flat. And once she's gone, she won't be walking back through that door for another 1,000 years. I turned and looked Ivy dead in the eye. Want to test that? She shifted in her chair, her confidence showing its first cracks. You can't do that. I absolutely can, I said, my tone flat. Your mother and I signed a prenup before we ever got married. If I file for divorce, she walks away with no part of the company. No house. No claim. She'll get some alimony, sure, but beyond that? She's out. Lila finally spoke. Her voice was softer now, careful. What kind of conditions, honey? I looked at her, steady. We sign a post-nup, I said. Something official. Clear rules. Boundaries. Finances. Custody of whatever's left between us. I stood, adjusting my cufflinks like I was back at a boardroom table. If you agree, let me know. I'll have my attorney draw it up. I started walking toward the hallway. Just before I disappeared from sight, I added, and if you don't, he'll have divorce papers instead. I didn't say another word. Just walked away, my footsteps echoing down the hallway behind me. But the conversation didn't stop. Their voices followed me, clear and careless. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs, old habit, I guess. Years of leadership taught me something. People reveal more when they think no one's listening. Ivy's voice came first, all light and dismissive. She was trying to spin the moment back in her favor. Come on, she said. He's not gonna divorce you. He still loves you. I waited. Then came Lila's reply, quieter, in touch with something I hadn't heard in a long time. Fear. You have no idea about your father, she said. If he said yes that quickly, it means something bad's brewing in that head of his. You shouldn't have brought up Thomas. Ivy laughed. Oh, please. He's a teddy bear. He won't do a thing. But Lila didn't laugh with her. Not this time. Sweetheart, she said, slowly, I wish you were right. But you don't know your father like I do. Before he joined your grandfather's company, he was a U.S. Army Ranger. He was one of the first boots on the ground in Afghanistan. She kept going, her voice dipping lower. Operation Enduring Freedom. I remember the first call I got from him on a satellite phone. His voice was colder than anything I'd ever heard. You have no idea what that man's capable of when he's pushed into a corner. Ivy fell silent. Lila added, barely above a whisper, I just hope we didn't wake something we can't put back to sleep. I stepped out of the house into the night, letting their voices fade behind me. The air was still, broken only by the quiet hum of streetlights. That part of me, Afghanistan, the past, we both tried to bury it. But now it stirred again, like something dangerous waking up after a long sleep. I did things over there I never talk about. Things you won't see in newspapers or on the nightly news. But someone had to do them. Someone had to make sure that the people back home could kiss their kids goodnight and sleep in peace. And to make sure of that, I made damn sure the enemy didn't sleep at all, or if they did, it was in a grave. The next morning, I skipped the office entirely. Instead, I drove straight to Matthew Sterling's law firm downtown. Matthew and I go way back, college roommates, and one hell of a lawyer. Sharp mind, sharper instincts. We've been through enough together that I didn't need to schedule a thing. He looked up from his desk the moment I walked in, the silver on his cufflinks catching the sunlight. Well, he said with a grin. The elusive Harper finally shows up. To what do I owe the pleasure? I didn't say a word. Just walked over to the chair in front of his desk and sat down. He chuckled, stood, and went over to the little bar cart by the window. Poured a couple fingers of whiskey into a glass and slid it across the desk to me. You never drink before noon, he said. So it's gotta be war or divorce. Which is it? I took a sip, steady. I need a post-nup drawn up. Tight. No loopholes. I want this thing bulletproof. I handed him the sheet with all the details I wanted. He skimmed it, blinked once, then leaned back slowly. A post-nup, he said. You're serious? As a heart attack, I told him. You've already got a prenup. Just toss her out and be done. I gave him a small smile. Where's the fun in that? If I throw her out now, she'll run crying to everyone, her friends, her family. Nobody's going to stop to ask what I think. I'll be the villain before I can even explain. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. What I've got planned. It solves everything in one shot. I told him the whole plan. He let out a whistle, then burst out laughing, deep, loud, almost falling out of his chair. Jesus, Ethan, he said, still laughing. I always knew you were cold, but this is stone cold. Damn. I wish your old man was around to see this. His tone softened, a rare thing for Matthew. He'd be proud. That night, after dinner, I found Lila in the kitchen, wiping down the counter like life hadn't just taken a nosedive. I kept my voice calm. Controlled. Maybe too calm. I spoke with Matthew, I said. He's got the document ready. You can meet him tomorrow morning at 10 to go through it. Bring your lawyer. It'll be easier that way. She paused, sponge still in hand, then gave a small nod without looking up. Okay, she said, like I just reminded her to take out the trash. I didn't say another word. Just turned around and walked out. I've learned silence can hit harder than any argument ever could. But as I headed upstairs, I heard voices drifting from Ivy's room. The door wasn't closed all the way. I stood there for a moment, leaning against the wall like a ghost in my own home. Ivy's voice came through first, sharp, annoyed. He what? He's making you sign something? Damn him. That old man's gone nuts. I guess it hit him right in the nuts. Then came the laughter. Light, careless, mean. Lila chuckled lightly and said, Sure. I'll sign it. Whatever. He's just putting on a show. She smiled like she knew something I didn't. He loves me. He always has. He can't live without me. Another little giggle slipped out. I'll have my fun. I'll come back. And he'll take me back. He always does. Yeah, Mom, Ivy chimed in. Just remind him, it's your life. Your rules. And just like that, the whole mood shifted. The weight of the post-nup didn't even register. It was like I'd handed them a grocery list, not a legal document. So, Ivy said, suddenly chipper, what are you going to wear for your date? You know Thomas loves that red dress you wore to the gala. Lila laughed, softer this time. I was thinking about that one, actually. Red always gets me compliments. I booked us a table at his restaurant. Private booth. Ivy let out an exaggerated sigh. God, Mom, this is going to be hot. Like, you're basically the lead in your own movie now. You deserve this. Lila hummed, pleased with herself. It's going to be perfect. Maybe just drinks, maybe dinner. We'll see where the night goes. They kept chatting, light and breezy, planning the night like teenagers sneaking out. And I just stood there quietly, listening from the shadows. My wife. My daughter. Planning betrayal like it was just another night in. Matthew's office always had that rich, polished feel. Dark wood walls, thick leather chairs, and a bar cart that got more use than he'd admit. I was already seated when Lila walked in, heels clicking with too much confidence. She wasn't alone. Ivy came with her, arms crossed, face full of that cocky attitude she wore like perfume. And right behind them was someone I didn't recognize, tall, poised, sharp-eyed, dressed in a navy suit that said, I don't blink. Her lawyer, Olivia Gray. Matthew took one look at her and lit up like Christmas morning. I gave him a discreet nudge under the table, just enough of a jab to bring him back to earth. He cleared his throat, adjusted his tie, and walked over holding the paperwork. Lila, he said with that fake charm of his, thanks for coming. He handed her the folder. She barely glanced at it before passing it to Olivia, who didn't waste a second. She flipped through it fast, eyes scanning like a machine. I watched her expression shift line by line. Then she slammed it shut and tossed it on the table like it had burned her fingers. This is unacceptable, she said, flat and cold. Lila leaned in, surprised. What? What does it say? Olivia turned toward her, voice steady but sharp. According to this post-nup, if either one of you files for divorce, you walk away with nothing. No alimony. No support. No joint assets. Everything defaults to Ethan. Lila blinked, stunned. Wait, what? Olivia didn't flinch. Assets from before the marriage remain separate. That's normal. But if you file for divorce while this open marriage agreement is active, you get nothing. Not a dime. I looked over at Lila and gave her the faintest smile. Just making sure you don't run off on me, I said lightly, as if I were joking. But Olivia wasn't done. She continued reading. The open marriage continues until both parties agree to end it together and sign a formal agreement. And if a child is conceived during this time, the parent assumes full responsibility. No shared custody. No support. She glanced up. He's not paying for your dates, your outfits, or your self-discovery. He'll cover household expenses and bills. That's it. Lila's face changed. She didn't say a word, but the silence said enough. Olivia turned another page. And finally, monthly STD testing, results submitted to Ethan. No visitors, no partners, no overnight guests allowed inside the shared home. Ever. That's when Ivy shot out of her chair like she'd been slapped. That's inhuman, she shouted. It's disgusting. You can't make Mom go through that. What are people going to say? I turned to her, calm as a lake. People won't say anything. Just a middle-aged woman enjoying her freedom, just doing it responsibly. Nothing shameful about that, right? Lila looked at me then, really looked, and for a second, I saw something in her eyes. Maybe defiance, maybe fear, or maybe just the realization that this wasn't going the way she thought it would. She looked at Olivia, then back at me, and just like that, she smiled. That same sweet, calculated smile she used when she thought she still had a shot at control. All right, honey, she said, syrupy and light. If that's what you want, I'll sign it. Later that night, the party was already in full swing. The room buzzed with soft music and expensive perfume, the playlist curated by Lila herself, something that could have played in a fancy hotel lobby. But I wasn't there for ambience. I was there to make a point. Lila floated through the crowd in a burgundy dress, sipping wine, talking like nothing had changed. Thomas was already there, of course, standing too close, glancing at her neckline a little too often, wearing that smug look like he thought he'd won something. Ivy and her friends were huddled in the corner, laughing about something, probably me. I caught a few sideways looks, followed by whispers. I could almost hear it. Who'd date Dad now? Funny how fast people forget who paid for the cars they drive, the tuition they brag about, and the silence they sell in return. But I didn't care, because my guest had just walked in. Chloe entered the room like a quiet breeze that turned every head. She wore a green satin dress that caught the light just right, moving with the kind of ease that came from knowing exactly who you are. People didn't recognize her right away. All they saw was beauty, grace, power wrapped in elegance. I walked over, kissed her cheek, and offered her my arm. You look incredible, I said. She smiled, soft and genuine. You ready? More than. We walked together toward the center of the room, side by side. The conversations dipped. Glasses paused mid-sip. Even the music felt like it faded, though maybe that was just in my head. Lila turned and saw us. Her eyes widened. Just a flicker, barely a second, but I caught it. Right before she buried it behind that fake, polished smile. Thomas froze like a statue. I walked Chloe up to the front, let go of her hand, and stepped toward the mic stand. I gave it a light tap, cleared my throat. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, steady and clear. May I have your attention? The music faded. Conversations died off. Every eye turned to me. I scanned the room slowly. Lila, Thomas, Ivy, her little clique, and the rest of the well-dressed audience. I smiled, calm and unshaken, and took the mic in hand. First, thank you all for coming out tonight. It means a lot, truly. It's been a long journey, full of change, clarity, and let's just say growth. A few polite nods, some half-smiles, glasses lifted in lazy toasts. I gave it a beat. After 22 years of marriage, Lila and I have chosen to enter a new chapter of our lives. A more modern chapter. One that, as a few of you might have already heard, involves an open marriage. I glanced over at Lila. She didn't move, her face frozen like she was holding her breath. A few days ago, Lila and our daughter Ivy brought this idea to me. Said I should be more progressive, open-minded, and, after thinking it over, I paused, letting the room hold its breath. I agreed. Some guests shifted in their seats. Confused glances exchanged across tables. I kept my smile right where it was. And now, I'd like to introduce someone. Mr. Thomas Bennett, I said, turning toward him. Would you please stand? The spotlight swung in his direction. Thomas looked like he'd been hit by a freight train, pale, stiff, and visibly sweating. This man, I said, gesturing toward him, will be my wife's new lover. The room was silent. I smiled pleasantly. And in the spirit of fairness, I brought someone too. Chloe stepped forward, radiant in a deep green dress that shimmered under the lights. Elegant, poised, she didn't just walk into the room. She took it. She's 21. A professional model. And, in a twist of fate that could only be written in fiction, she's also the daughter of Mr. Thomas Bennett. Gasps shot across the room. Murmurs followed like ripples. Lila's mouth fell open. Ivy clutched her champagne glass like it might save her from drowning. Thomas? He backed up a step, staring at Chloe like she was a ghost. Lila's parents were the first to leave. No words. Just shame in their eyes as they slipped out through the crowd. I turned to Chloe, took her hand gently, and pulled her in. I kissed her, light, respectful, but deliberate. Then I faced the crowd again. And now, I said with a cool smile, let the open marriage games begin. That night, Chloe and I stayed at the Marriott Grand. Guilt? None. My marriage ended the second Lila brought up the idea of sleeping around. So why pretend? It was my turn, and I was going to enjoy it. The next morning, I walked through the front door humming, I'm leaving on a jet plane. Lila was at the table, still in last night's clothes. Ivy sat next to her, both of them looking wrecked. Puffy eyes. Tear-streaked faces. I strolled in, casual as ever. Ivy jumped up, voice cracking with rage. How could you? I looked at her, smiled, and said, just like that. Then I walked straight to my room. After a shower, I came back down, this time whistling Don't Worry, Be Happy. I made myself breakfast, sat down, and started eating like nothing had happened. Ivy wasn't done. How could you date someone the same age as me? I looked up at her. Sit, I said. She hesitated but sat, probably expecting another argument. Instead, I leaned in. Let me give you an example, I began. Let's say you've got $400,000 to spend, and you want a car. Do you walk into a Ferrari showroom and buy the dream car you've always wanted? Or do you go to a used car lot and pick something with 1,000,000 miles on it, rust on the frame, worn out from years of bad drivers? I paused, watching her face closely. So, what's it gonna be? She blinked, thought for a second, then said it almost automatically. The Ferrari. I nodded. Exactly. That's what I did. Ivy frowned. But, what about Mom? I looked at her. Did I choose this path for her? Did I stop her? No. I let the question hang. So why should I be the only one who downgrades? I gave her a moment to let that sink in. She gets what she earned. And I do too. I took the last bite of breakfast, pushed the plate aside, and stood up. I grabbed my coat and walked out of the room, leaving her speechless. I kept seeing Chloe. And for the first time in years, I felt free, alive, even. As for Lila, she wasn't so lucky. Thomas bailed the moment he found out who Chloe really was. The irony hit hard. He didn't even have the guts to face the wreckage he helped create. Weeks passed. The house got quieter. But I could hear the conversations, the whispered tones between Lila and Ivy in the evenings. Low and tense. One night, I was heading upstairs when I caught part of a conversation from the living room. It's hard, Ivy, Lila said, voice tight with frustration. You don't know what it's like for a 47-year-old woman trying to find someone decent. The older ones just want someone to take care of them. The ones my age? They're only looking for intimacy. Hit it and leave. I paused on the stairs, just out of sight, a smirk tugging at my lips. Ivy asked, what about younger guys? Lila sighed. They want money, Ivy. That's all. They look at me, and they see what little I have left. They think I'm some kind of opportunity. But I've got nothing left to give. I took a deep breath and walked away. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. She was living the outcome of her own choices. I'd already moved on. Found peace in the path I'd chosen, one that didn't include her. The truth? Lila had very little left, and it showed. As for me, my time with Chloe? It was real. It was refreshing. It was exactly what I needed. The more time I spent with Chloe, the more I realized she wasn't what people might assume. This wasn't some sugar baby situation. Not even close. She had a solid history in the fashion world. She'd dealt with her share of creeps, pushy agents, and sleazy photographers. She'd learned early how to see through the games. That wasn't her thing. What she wanted was something real, someone she could build a life with. Maybe even a family. One night, we were sitting out on her balcony, wine glasses in hand, just watching the city breathe. You know, Ethan, she said, her voice soft but serious, I never really had a good relationship with my dad. It's complicated. He was always distant, always wrapped up in his own world. There was something raw in her eyes when she said it, something unguarded. It caught me off guard, honestly. I spent years trying to earn his approval, she said, but it never came. She paused, looking down at her wine. When I found out he was dating your wife, I'll admit it, I wanted to hurt him. I wanted him to feel neglected the way I always felt. That's why I agreed to go out with you at first. I let that settle for a moment. Then I gave her a small chuckle and a sideways grin. Well, that explains a lot, I said. But I guess somewhere along the way, you stopped looking at him and started actually seeing me. She smiled back, but it was different this time. Gentle. Genuine. Yeah, I did, she said. Somewhere in the middle of all this mess, I started caring. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did. I nodded slowly and reached over to take her hand. Believe me, I didn't plan for any of this either. But life has a funny way of putting you exactly where you're supposed to be. We'll take it slow, I added. No pressure. No expectations. Just see where it goes. Her fingers tightened around mine. A quiet agreement. There was something about it that felt real. Something solid. I'd like that, she whispered, her eyes locked with mine. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt peace. 3 months rolled by. Things were going steady with Chloe. Smooth, even. Until one night, she dropped a bomb on me. Ethan, she said, her tone firm. I'm pregnant. I froze. It took me a second to catch up. What? I want to keep the baby, she said, calm but serious. I know this isn't how we planned anything, but it's happening. I'm ready. My mind was racing. I hadn't expected this. Not even close. Chloe, are you sure? I asked. This changes everything. She cut me off. If you're thinking it's not yours, I'm open to a DNA test. I won't argue, but I'm not backing down. If you want to walk away, do it. I'm not asking for a dime. I'll raise the child on my own. I didn't respond right away. There wasn't much to say. If she was that certain, then I had no reason to doubt her. That night, I came home, and the mood in the house was thick with tension. Ivy was waiting for me. The second I stepped through the door, she was shouting. How could you do this? Everyone's laughing at me. My dad is dating a girl my age. Are you not even a little ashamed? I was done playing the villain in someone else's story. I sat at the kitchen table and motioned for her. Sit down, Ivy, I said calmly. She rolled her eyes but sat. I looked at her, steady. Are you ashamed of living off your parents? You're 22, haven't worked a day in your life, and you want me to feel bad for dating a beautiful, ambitious woman? Her face turned red. But I wasn't finished. Don't try to guilt me. It's not going to work. She stayed quiet. So I kept going. If you care so much about your friends' opinions, here's what you're going to do. Pack your things. Go live with them. You've got until tomorrow night. After that, I'm tossing your stuff on the curb. She stormed upstairs crying, ran straight to Lila. Within minutes, Lila came down, face tight with anger. Before she could speak, I cut her off. If you've got a problem with what I said, you're free to leave too. I looked her dead in the eye. No bluff. No flinch. She saw it. She felt it. And she backed down. Ivy, she said quietly, turning back toward the stairs, pack your bags. Ivy shot her a look, half betrayal, half rage, and stormed into her room. I didn't care anymore. That night, I heard Ivy on the phone, arranging everything. By morning, she was gone. Later that week, I came home early. Lila was sitting at the kitchen table, her back hunched a little, her energy drained. I walked in, trying to keep it light. No date tonight? I asked. She smiled, weak and tired. Nope. Nobody wants to date me. There was a touch of bitterness in her voice. I nodded. Got it. Well, I've got one. She didn't respond. I won't be back tonight, I added, and headed to my room to grab a few things. As I passed her, I heard her sob. Quiet, like she didn't want anyone to notice. I noticed. I just didn't stop. That night, I stayed with Chloe. A few days later, I knew it was time to face Lila again. We sat down at the table. No yelling, no drama. I looked her in the eye. There's something I need to tell you. She looked at me like she was holding on to some kind of hope. I almost felt bad. I'm going to be a father, I said, letting it hang. I'll be spending more time with Chloe. You can do whatever you need to do with whoever you want. For just a second, I saw it. Her face fell. She didn't cry. She didn't argue, but the blow landed. And that was enough. She didn't argue. All she said was, okay. Then she got up, quiet, slow, and walked toward Ivy's room. I heard her pause outside the door. And just as I was getting ready to leave, I heard it, her crying. The kind that starts in your chest and breaks through, no matter how hard you try to hold it in. Muffled, but unmistakable. I stayed at the door. I didn't want to intrude, but I couldn't unhear it either. And then I heard her pick up the phone. She called Ivy. Her voice cracked as she spoke. I messed up, she said, almost like she couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. I should never have listened to you, and now it's too late. A long pause. A shaky breath. Ethan's going to be a dad. Another sigh, deep and heavy, like the whole weight of it had finally settled on her. I'll send you some money, Ivy. I'll come see you soon. I couldn't make out what Ivy said in response, but I knew it didn't matter. She was broke, jobless, couch surfing at her friends' places. I wondered how long that could last. How long before that safety net gave out? 2 months passed. I was spending more and more time with Chloe. It felt good. Simple, free from the ghosts of a broken marriage. Back at home, though, Lila was falling apart. She barely left her room. Her clothes hung loose on her. Her skin looked pale and tired. She looked hollow. Whatever spark she used to have was long gone. She was spiraling, and I wasn't about to throw her a rope. She made her choice. Now she had to live with it. One evening, I picked up the phone and called her parents. Told them everything. From the first open marriage conversation to the last screaming match with Ivy. I didn't sugarcoat it. I laid out the truth, every detail. Her father, always the more rational one, came the next day. He listened quietly as I told him how we ended up here. No interruptions. No emotion on his face. When I finished, he looked at me, steady, a little weary, and said, "You should have divorced her, Ethan. Now you've broken her. I don't blame you," he added. "But this went too far." I nodded, guilt poking at the edge of my conscience. "I'll divorce her," I said quietly. "It's the only thing left to do." He nodded too, slow and heavy. "That would be merciful," he muttered. Then he looked back at me, his face tightening. "And that brat of yours, don't let her near our house." "I've already thrown her out," I said, firm. "And if she shows up at your door, you're free to do the same." He held my gaze for a long moment. Then he turned, and there she was, Lila, standing in the doorway. Silent. He walked over, took her hand without a word, and the two of them left. That was the last I saw of her. A few days later, I went to Matthew's office. My mind was already made up. He was at his desk, flipping through some case files. "I need to file for divorce," I said. He didn't even look up. "Finally," he muttered with a half smirk. Then he met my eyes. "What changed?" I sighed. "If I don't end this now, she's going to die in front of me. She's fading. I can't keep watching it. I'll give her a settlement. One lump sum. Then it's over." He leaned back in his chair, nodding. "I told you to divorce her from the start." "I know," I said. "Back then, I thought she'd get frustrated and walk out first. But she didn't. She just clung on like a ghost of who she used to be." Matthew stood and put a hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry," he said. "I'll handle it." And he did. Within days, the papers were filed. He pulled some strings, moved things along fast. No drawn-out hearings. No courtroom drama. Just signatures. Silence. And finally, an end. About a week later, Lila's parents showed up at the house. Her father looked relieved, maybe a little sad. But when he shook my hand, he meant it. "Thank you," he said quietly. "We don't need the money." "Keep it," I replied. "Let her have something. Just something to fall back on." He nodded. We didn't say much after that. Just a few words. And then they were gone. That was the last time anyone brought her name up in my house. A few months later, Chloe gave birth to our son, Lucas. The first time I held him, something in me shifted. Something deep. He was mine, undeniably. And I knew I wanted to do better this time. Be better. Just a few days after Lucas was born, Chloe and I got married. Quiet, simple. We signed a prenup, just like the one my dad had me sign years ago. No risks. Chloe didn't even flinch. "I'm not here for your money," she said, signing without hesitation. "I'm here for you. And for Lucas." And I believed her. Still do. A few months into our marriage, I stopped at a Burger King in between meetings. Just grabbing a quick bite. As I waited for my order, I noticed someone working behind the counter. Her back was to me. Hair tied up. Shirt stained. Face flushed from the kitchen heat. Then she turned. Ivy. She was flipping burgers. sweating, focused. She didn't see me, but I saw her, and I felt proud, not because of where she was, but because she was doing something, working, hustling. No handouts, no drama, just effort. That meant something. I didn't stay long, grabbed my order, and walked out without saying a word. Wasn't ready for a conversation. Not sure she was either. Since then, every once in a while, I drive past that same Burger King, catch glimpses of her through the window, wiping tables, taking orders, sometimes even laughing with coworkers. She looks okay, not bitter, not entitled, just living. But I've never gone back in. Not because I don't care, but because I still don't know if what broke between us can ever truly be fixed. 5 years went by. It was a quiet Sunday morning. Lucas was in his room drawing spaceships on the wall again, and I was folding his tiny socks, those impossibly small ones that always seem to disappear in the laundry. That's when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Lila's father. I picked it up and answered with a simple, "Hello." His voice came through softer than I remembered. Frail, almost hesitant. "She's gone," he said. "Lila. She passed in her sleep last night." I didn't say a word at first. Just sat there, sock in hand, everything else in me kind of stalling. The silence between us stretched until I finally forced something out. "I'm sorry. My condolences." He didn't say anything else. Neither did I. There wasn't anything left to say. When the call ended, I didn't tell Chloe. I didn't tell anyone. Instead, I walked over to the window and leaned against the frame. Chloe was outside, barefoot in the backyard, laughing. Lucas, now 5, was chasing her in circles, holding a stick like it was Excalibur. His tiny voice was full of joy, shrieking with every sprint and stumble. The 2 puppies Chloe rescued the week before were darting between them, rolling and barking in the sunlight like they'd been born into happiness. It was such a simple moment. So normal. So full of life. And that's when it hit me. Something cracked open inside. Maybe it was a memory. Maybe it was grief. Maybe just the leftover weight of things left unsaid. Lila had made her choices. I made mine. We both lived with them. And now, hers had run out. I kept watching. Lucas tackled one of the dogs, fell into the grass, giggling like it was the best moment of his life. The dog licked his face while he squealed and laughed uncontrollably. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not enough to break me. Just enough to remind me. Grief, maybe. Guilt. Or just that strange ache you get when someone you once loved, really loved, is gone forever. No matter what happened. No matter how ugly it got. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stood there quietly, soaking in the moment, anchored by the ones who were still here. The ones I love now. The ones who love me back. Dear viewer, thank you for your invaluable viewing. We will be very grateful for your likes, subscriptions, comments, and sharing our story. See you soon.